Have you ever had that one coworker who seems to live at the office? You know the type. They're the first one in, the last one out. Their desk light a solitary beacon in the evening gloom. For me, that person was David. When I first started at the firm, I admired his dedication. I'd be packing up my bag at 6, and he'd still be typing away, a faint smile on his face. I'd wave goodnight, and he'd just nod, never breaking his focus. At first, I thought, wow, this guy's a real go-getter. Role model. But as weeks turned into months, my admiration slowly curdled into a strange sort of unease. It started with the small things. I'd come in early one morning and find a coffee mug in the sink that was still warm, even though the cleaning crew had been through the night before. Or I'd noticed that the leftovers I'd left in the shared fridge were slightly rearranged. I brushed it off. Big office, lots of people. Weird things happen. But the feeling that something was off just wouldn't go away. David never seemed to talk about a life outside of work. No mention of family, friends, or weekend plans. His entire universe seemed to be contained within the 4 walls of our open-plan office. He wore the same rotation of 3 gray suits, always perfectly pressed, which was strange because he never seemed to leave long enough to go to a dry cleaner. The first real crack in the facade appeared during a conversation with Frank, the night security guard. I was working late on a big project, and Frank was doing his rounds. We got to chatting, and I casually mentioned David's incredible work ethic. That David? He must be racking up some serious overtime. Does he ever go home? Frank stopped, his brow furrowed. David? David who? I pointed to his desk. The guy who sits over there. A quiet, older guy. Always here. Frank shook his head slowly. Son, I've been working this shift for 5 years. I check everyone out. No one by that name has ever clocked out after 8 p.m. In fact, my logs show his access card as UNA had been used to exit the building after hours in over a year. A cold chill went down my spine. That was impossible. I saw David myself, nearly every night. I left, and he stayed. How could he not be exiting the building? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he had a different way out. A special arrangement. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. The next day, I watched David more closely. He moved with a quiet, almost ghostly efficiency. He'd disappear for long stretches, and I just assumed he was in a meeting or the restroom. But now, I started timing him. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Sometimes a full hour would go by, and he'd reappear as if from nowhere, with no explanation. The weirdness escalated. Other colleagues started noticing things too. Sarah from marketing swore she heard faint humming coming from the supply closet late one evening. Mark from accounting said he saw a shadow move near the back staircase on a weekend when the office was supposed to be completely empty. We all talked about it in hushed tones, half joking about an office ghost. But in the back of my mind, every strange occurrence pointed back to David, the man who was always here but never seemed to leave. I became obsessed. I started staying later myself, pretending to work, but really I was watching him. One night, everyone had gone home except for me and David. As usual, he was at his desk, bathed in the glow of his monitor. I hid behind a large potted plant near my cubicle, heart pounding. Around 10 p.m., he stood up, stretched, and looked around the empty office. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He walked over to the large, rarely used storage room at the far end of the floor. It was a dusty old room filled with archived files and obsolete computer equipment. He didn't use his key card. Instead, he knelt down, fiddled with a loose panel at the bottom of the wall, and slid a section of it away. He slipped through the opening and the panel slid back into place. Seamless. He was gone. He was in the walls. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. My mind was racing. Was I hallucinating? Was this some kind of prank? I waited for what felt like an eternity, my body frozen in place. An Orpa said nothing. I crept over to the storage room, my hands shaking. I ran my fingers along the bottom of the wall where I'd seen him disappear, and there it was. A slight crack, a seam that was almost invisible. With a surge of adrenaline, Primera Priede at Italiano, the panel slid open, revealing a dark, narrow space. The air that wafted out was stale and smelled of, well, it smelled like someone had been living in it. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and crawled inside. It was a maintenance crawl space, a labyrinth of pipes and wires running between the walls, and nestled in a small alcove was a makeshift home. There was a sleeping bag, a small collection of canned food, a water bottle, and a stack of books. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Pinned to the makeshift wall was a collage of photographs. There were pictures of us, his coworkers, me, Sarah, Mark, everyone. They weren't official company photos. They were candid shots, me laughing at the water cooler, Sarah eating her lunch, Mark yawning at his desk. They had been taken from a distance, without our knowledge. It was a shrine to his workplace obsession. My horror deepened when I saw the vents. There were small, almost imperceptible holes drilled into the plasterboard, positioned perfectly to look out into the office. One was aimed directly at my desk, another at Sarah's. He had been watching us, listening to our conversations, observing our every move, not just during the day, but at all hours. He wasn't just living in the office. He had made the office his world, and us, his unwilling subjects. The humming Sarah heard, that was probably him. The shadows, him, moving through the hidden passages of his kingdom. Suddenly, I heard a noise, a soft, scraping sound coming from further down the crawl space. He was coming back. Panic seized me. I scrambled out of the opening, my heart about to burst out of my chest, and slid the panel back into place just as I heard him rounding a corner in the walls. I ran. I didn't grab my bag. I didn't log out of my computer. I just ran out of the office, past a very confused Frank at the security desk, and didn't stop until I was in my car, doors locked, speeding away. I never went back to that office. I called my boss the next day and quit, giving a vague excuse about a family emergency. I couldn't bring myself to explain the truth. Who would believe me? Security was called, and they did an investigation. They found the hidden space, just as I had left it. But David was gone. He had vanished as mysteriously as he had lived. There was no trace of him. It was as if he had been absorbed into the building itself. Sometimes, I still think about it. I look at my new coworkers in my new office, and I wonder what they do when they go home. And a small part of me, a paranoid, terrified part, wonders if they ever really leave at all. Thanks for listening, and if you have a creepy coworker story of your own, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more strange tales. Stay safe out there. If one of them was hiding a secret so dark, it would make your skin crawl. This is the story of the coworker with two lives. It all started with a guy we'll call Alex. Alex joined our marketing team, and from day one, he was the office superstar. He was charismatic, funny, and incredibly good at his job. He remembered everyone's birthday, brought in donuts on Fridays, and always had a compliment ready. He was the kind of person everyone instantly liked. He fit in so perfectly, it was almost too perfect. After a few weeks, some of us started noticing little oddities. His questions, for instance, they started off normal, like how was your weekend, or any fun plans for the holiday. But then they got specific. He'd ask things like, what time do you usually leave for work? Or do you always take the same route home? One time, he asked a female colleague what kind of locks she had on her doors. She laughed it off, thinking he was just being quirky, but it left a weird feeling. He'd also ask about our families, but not in the usual way. He wanted to know our spouses' full names, where our kids went to school, what our parents' professions were. He'd jot down these details in a little black notebook he always carried, saying he was just bad with names and details. We all just thought he was exceptionally thoughtful, trying to remember personal things about us. The real red flags started waving when we tried to get to know him better. Anytime someone asked about his past, his family, or where he grew up, his answers were incredibly vague. He'd say things like, "Oh, a little town up north you've probably never heard of," or "my family is not that interesting." He never shared personal stories. He never had any photos on his desk. When we tried to add him on social media, he'd claim he didn't use it. In this day and age, who isn't on at least one platform? It was strange, but we chalked it up to him being a private person. The turning point came during a company happy hour. One of my colleagues, let's call her Sarah, was chatting with him. She mentioned she was from a small town in Oregon. Alex's face lit up and he said, "No way. Once spent a few years there myself." "What high school did you go to?" Sarah named her school, and Alex started rattling off names of teachers and local hangouts. Sarah was amazed. But later that night, she realized something was off. The timeline didn't add up. The years he claimed to have lived there were the same years she was in middle school, yet he talked about it as if they were contemporaries. Sarah mentioned this to me and another coworker, Ben. The next day, we started comparing notes, and suddenly all the little weird things about Alex started to form a disturbing pattern. The strange questions, the vague past, the lack of a digital footprint. It was all very unsettling. Ben, who was a bit of an amateur sleuth, decided to do some digging. First, he tried a simple background check using the name and information Alex had provided to HR. The results were nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was like Alex Miller didn't exist before he walked into our office. There were no credit records, no previous addresses, no educational history. It was a complete blank slate. This was no longer just weird. It was genuinely alarming. Who has no record of their existence? The three of us became obsessed. We started watching him more closely at work. We noticed he always paid for lunch with cash, never a card. He parked his car, an old, nondescript sedan, at the furthest corner of the parking lot, away from any cameras. His stories about his weekend were always generic. Went for a hike, caught up on some reading with no verifiable details. The real breakthrough, or rather, the moment that pushed us from concerned to terrified, happened one evening. Ben was working late, and from his window, he saw Alex go to his car. But instead of leaving, Alex just sat there for nearly an hour. Curiosity got the better of Ben. He quietly left the building and circled around to the back of the parking lot, staying out of sight. He managed to get close enough to peer into Alex's car through the back window. What he saw made his blood run cold. On the passenger seat was a duffel bag, and spilling out of it were several different sets of keys, a couple of different security guard uniforms, and, most chillingly, a stack of what looked like fake IDs. Each ID had Alexa's picture, but with a different name. Ben snapped a quick, blurry photo with his phone before retreating back to the office, his heart pounding. The next morning, Ben showed me and Sarah the photo. We were speechless. This wasn't just a private guy. This was someone actively living a double life, or maybe multiple lives. The fake IDs, the uniforms, what was he doing? We knew we couldn't ignore this. We had to go to the police. We were hesitant, worried they wouldn't take us seriously. My coworker is just weird. It sounded flimsy, but with the photos of the IDs and the blank background check, we hoped it was enough. We went to the local police department after work and laid out everything we knew. The strange questions, the non-existent identity, the suspicious items in his car. Initially, the officer was skeptical, but when he ran the name Alex Miller and also found nothing, his demeanor changed. He asked if we knew his license plate number. Luckily, Ben had thought to jot it down. The officer typed it into his system. After a few moments of tense silence, he looked up at us, his face green. "The name on the vehicle's registration isn't Alex Miller," he said. "It's Michael Turner!" And Michael Turner has several outstanding warrants in 3 different states. The officer pulled up a mugshot on his screen. It was him. It was our charming, funny coworker, Alex. The warrants weren't for theft or fraud, as we might have guessed. They were for aggravated stalking and harassment. The police filled us in on the horrifying details. Michael Turner, or Alex, had a pattern. He would move to a new city, create a new identity, and get a job. Then, he would select a target, usually a female coworker. He'd use his charm to get close, gathering an unnerving amount of personal information. Their schedule, their address, details about their family. The same things he had been asking us. He would then use this information to terrorize them. He would follow them home, break into their apartments when they were out, leave unsettling gifts, and make anonymous, threatening phone calls. He had done this in at least 4 other cities, always managing to disappear before law enforcement could catch up to him. He was a professional predator, a fugitive who hid in plain sight. We were horrified. We replayed every conversation, every interaction, the questions about our routes home, our door locks, our families. It wasn't just quirky conversation. It was reconnaissance. He was gathering data, potentially looking for his next victim right there in our office. Sarah, the one he had asked the most specific questions to, turned pale. She realized how close she might have been to becoming his next target. The police acted quickly. They didn't want to risk him getting spooked and running again. The next morning, as Alex walked into the office, coffee and donuts in hand, with his usual, cheerful, "Good morning, everyone," the plainclothes detectives were waiting for him by his desk. The whole office watched in stunned silence as they placed him under arrest. He didn't fight. His charming smile just vanished, replaced by a cold, empty stare. It was like a mask had been ripped off, revealing the monster underneath. The aftermath was surreal. Our workplace, which had always felt like a safe, friendly environment, was suddenly tainted. We all felt a chilling sense of violation. We had shared lunches with a wanted fugitive. We had laughed at his jokes, completely unaware of the darkness he was hiding. It made us all look at each other differently, wondering how well we really knew anyone. The story serves as a terrifying reminder that evil doesn't always come with a scary face. Sometimes it comes with a charming smile and a box of donuts. It taught us to trust our instincts. Those little red flags, the things that seem just a bit off, are sometimes signs of something much more sinister. Always be aware of your surroundings and the information you share, because you never truly know who might be listening. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories that will make you question everything. Stay safe out there. Have you ever worked in an office that just felt off, that strange, unsettling feeling you get when you're the last one there? Burning the midnight oil. That's how it started for us at Sterling Solutions. On the dreary, gray 7th floor. It began with whispers, faint and fleeting, like a radio tuned to a dead station, just on the edge of hearing. They seemed to come from one specific spot, Cubicle 7C. The thing is, Cubicle 7C was empty. Had been for months. We'd walk past, maybe on our way to the coffee machine, and we'd hear it. A soft sigh, a mumbled word. We'd stop, peek over the partition, and see nothing but an empty chair, a dusty monitor, and a stack of blank paper. At first, we laughed it off. It's just the old air conditioning, Dave from accounting would say. Or maybe the building's settling. But the whispers became more frequent, more distinct. It wasn't just random sounds anymore. It sounded like someone was trying to talk, their voice lost in static. A few of us, me included, got curious and a little creeped out. Sarah, one of our project managers, decided to ask HR about it. She casually brought it up to Brenda, our HR manager, a woman who seemed to run on spreadsheets and lukewarm tea. Brenda just gave her a blank stare. Cobicle, 7, 6. No one has been assigned to that desk since. Well, for at least 6 months, she said, tapping away at her keyboard, not even looking up. The system shows it's vacant, probably just your imagination, dear. That dismissal, that cold, corporate response, only made us more certain that something wasn't right. We weren't all imagining it. The whispers were real. Then came Alex. He was the new guy, fresh out of college, full of energy and eager to make a good impression. On his first day, our manager, Mr. Henderson, walked him around the office. And where did he lead him? Straight to Cubicle 7C. A few of us exchanged nervous glances. We wanted to say something, to warn him. But what could we say? Hey, welcome to the team, by the way. Your new desk is haunted. We'd sound crazy, so we just watched as Alex unpacked his bag, set up his laptop, and settled into the very chair we'd all been avoiding for weeks. For the first couple of days, everything was normal. Alex was quiet, focused on his training modules. The office was its usual hum of keyboards and phone calls. The whispers stopped. We started to relax, thinking maybe it really had been the old building or our overworked minds playing tricks on us. Maybe having someone physically there, a living, breathing person, had silenced whatever it was. It was about a week later when Alex came to my desk. He looked pale, his usual bright-eyed enthusiasm gone. "Hey," he started, his voice low. "This is going to sound really weird, but do you ever hear things in this office? Like someone calling your name when no one's there?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "Sometimes," I admitted, trying to sound casual. "Why do you ask?" He ran a hand through his hair. "It's been happening for a couple of days. I'll be working, headphones on, and I'll hear it, clear as day. Someone whispering my name, Alex. Just like that, I take my headphones off, look around, and there's no one." He was clearly shaken. I told him it was probably just someone trying to get his attention from across the room. But I knew, and I think he knew, it was something more. The name calling was just the beginning. The activity around Cubicle 7C started to escalate, and it wasn't just whispers anymore. Alex started complaining about a constant, bone-deep, cold centered right at his desk. You could literally walk past his cubicle and feel the temperature drop by 10 degrees. It was like stepping into a walk-in freezer. His computer would randomly the lights directly above his desk would flicker violently, buzzing like an angry insect, while the rest of the office lights were perfectly fine. Maintenance came to check the wiring twice. They found nothing wrong. Alex was becoming a wreck. He was jumpy, sleep-deprived, and his work was suffering. He'd come in each morning with dark circles under his eyes, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He confessed to a few of us that it was getting worse at night. He'd stay late to catch up on work, and that's when it was the most active. He'd hear drawers opening and closing on their own. He'd see shadows moving in his peripheral vision. One time, he swore he felt an icy hand brush against the back of his neck. He was terrified, but he was new and didn't want to make a fuss or lose his job. That's when we decided to do some digging of our own. Sarah, being the resourceful project manager she is, befriended one of the old-timers in the mailroom, a guy named Jerry who had been with the company for over 30 years. We bought him lunch, and after a little small talk, we asked him about Cubicle 7C. Jerry's friendly demeanor vanished. He put down his sandwich and looked at us with a grave expression. "You're asking about Robert's desk?" he said quietly. "Robert Finch." He told us the story. About a year ago, a man named Robert Finch worked at that desk. He was a quiet, dedicated employee, but he was going through a lot of personal turmoil. He was under immense pressure, both at work and at home. One Monday morning, his colleagues came in to find him. They found him slumped over in his chair, right there at Cubicle 7C. A massive heart attack. He had passed away over the weekend, alone in the empty office. The company had hushed it up. They cleaned out the desk, told everyone he had resigned for personal reasons, and left the cubicle empty. Until now, until Alex. Suddenly, it all made a horrifying kind of sense. The whispers, the cold, the flickering lights. Was it Robert still at his desk, unable to leave? The knowledge made everything 10 times more terrifying. The office no longer felt just off. It felt heavy, saturated with a deep sadness and a lingering presence. Alex was on the verge of quitting. He couldn't take it anymore. The final straw came on a Thursday night. It was late, around 9 p.m. Only Alex and I were left on the floor, finishing up a big project. I was at my desk, a few rows away from his. The office was dead silent, except for the clicking of our keyboards. Suddenly, the clicking from his cubicle stopped. I didn't think much of it until I heard a gasp. It was a sharp, terrified sound that cut through the silence. I looked over towards 7C. Alex was standing up, his chair pushed back so hard it had nearly tipped over. He was staring, frozen, at the empty space in front of his desk. His face was as white as a sheet. "What is it?" I called out, my heart starting to pound in my chest. He didn't answer. He just slowly raised a trembling hand and pointed at his chair. I got up and cautiously walked over. As I got closer, the air grew frigid. My breath misted in front of me. I looked where he was pointing, at his chair, and I saw it. For just a second, I saw it too. It wasn't a person, not a solid form, but a shape. A dark, wavering silhouette of a man, sitting in the chair, hunched over the desk. It was still working. It was transparent, like heat haze rising from asphalt, but it was unmistakably there. There was no face, No features, just a profound sense of despair emanating from it. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it flickered and vanished. The cold dissipated instantly. Alex let out a sound, a choked sob, and just ran. He grabbed his coat and bag and didn't even look back. He sprinted for the elevators and was gone. I stood there, alone in the silent office, staring at the now empty chair in cubicle 7C. I never saw Alex again. He emailed his resignation the next morning. Cubicle 7C is empty again. Brendan HR says it's pending reassignment. But we all know no one will ever sit there again. The whispers have returned, softer now, almost mournful. Sometimes, when you walk past, you can still feel that sudden, icy chill. It's a permanent part of the 7th floor now, a silent reminder of the man who never clocked out. Thanks for watching our story. If you've ever had a creepy experience at your workplace, share it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales. Stay safe out there. Have you ever had that one coworker who just seems a little too nice? You know the type, always bringing in donuts, remembering everyone's birthday, or in teas. Case bringing coffee for the entire team every single morning. Let's call him Mark. Mark was the office sunshine. Rain or shine, he'd walk in with a tray of steaming cups, customized for each person. A latte for Sarah, a black Americano for David, a cappuccino for Emily. Everyone loved it. It was a small gesture, but it started the day on a positive note. Everyone, that is, except for Alex. Alex was the quiet one, the top performer who mostly kept to himself. Every morning, Mark would offer him a cup, and every morning, Alex would politely refuse. "No thanks, Mark. I'm good," he'd say with a slight smile, never giving a reason. Some people thought it was strange, maybe even a little rude. Others figured Alex just wasn't a coffee drinker or preferred to make his own. Mark never seemed offended. He'd just shrugged, smile, and say, "All right, maybe tomorrow," and move on. This daily ritual became a running joke in the office. It was just a normal part of their morning routine. Mark's coffee run, and Alex's politer fusa. This went on for months, maybe even close to a year. The office dynamic was set. Mark was the friendly, generous guy, and Alex was the brilliant but reserved loner. They weren't friends, but they were cordial. They worked on different teams, but their paths would cross in meetings, where Alex would often receive praise for his innovative ideas and stellar results, while Mark's contributions were, well, they were solid, but never quite spectacular. There was no obvious tension, just the quiet, unspoken rivalry that can exist in any competitive workplace. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a particularly hectic Tuesday. A big project deadline was looming, and the entire office was buzzing with a nervous energy. Mark came in as usual, balancing his tray of coffees. He made his rounds, handing out the familiar cups. Latte for Sarah, black coffee for David. He got to Alex's desk. "Morning, Alex." "The usual offer?" he asked, with his usual cheer. But this time something was different. Alex was on a crucial call, deeply focused, gesturing with one hand while typing furiously with the other. He barely glanced up, just gave a distracted nod and wave, which Mark apparently misinterpreted as a yes. Mark placed a steaming cup of black coffee on the corner of Alex's desk and moved on. About 10 minutes later, Alex finished his call. He looked exhausted. He glanced at the coffee, probably assuming he'd made it himself earlier and forgotten. Or maybe in his distracted state, he just didn't think about it. He picked up the cup and took a long, deep gulp. He made a face. The coffee must have tasted off, maybe a bit bitter. He pushed it aside and tried to get back to work. But within a few minutes, he started to look unwell. He was pale, sweating. He clutched his stomach, a look of confusion and pain on his face. He tried to stand up, maybe to go to the restroom, but he stumbled, knocking over a stack of papers. That's when his colleagues noticed something was seriously wrong. Sarah rushed over to him. "Alex, are you okay?" He couldn't answer. He was gasping for air, his face turning a frightening shade of gray. He collapsed to the floor, convulsing. Panic erupted in the office. Someone screamed. David yelled to call an ambulance. It was Charles. Paramedics arrived within minutes, and worked frantically on Alex, eventually rushing him to the hospital in critical condition. The office was in shock. No one could work. Whispers filled the air. What happened? Was it a heart attack? A stroke? He was so young and seemed perfectly healthy. As the initial shock wore off, a dark suspicion began to creep in. It was Emily who voiced it first. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling. "He drank the coffee. He never drinks the coffee." All eyes in the room slowly turned towards Mark's empty desk. Mark had conveniently taken an early lunch right after distributing the coffee and hadn't come back yet. The atmosphere grew thick with a silent, horrifying accusation. The office manager, trying to quell the rising panic, decided to contact building security. He explained the situation, the sudden illness, the coffee. He asked them to review the security footage from their floor, specifically focusing on the kitchen and the main office area that morning. The security team understood the gravity of the situation and immediately got to work. The rest of the staff was sent home. The office was now a potential crime scene. Later that afternoon, the police arrived. They had been alerted by the hospital, who had found traces of a potent, fast-acting poison in Alex's system. It was a type of toxin that was difficult to trace and could easily be mistaken for a sudden, severe medical event. The doctor said if he had consumed the entire cup, he would have died within minutes. The fact that he only took one gulp is what saved his life. It was now officially a case of attempted murder. The detectives interviewed everyone, asking about office dynamics, relationships, and any potential enemies Alex might have had. But Alex was a private person. He didn't have enemies, just professional rivals. The focus inevitably returned to the coffee. Who had access? Who brought it in? The answer was always the same. Mark. When the police questioned Mark, he was the picture of concern and disbelief. He claimed he had no idea what happened. He said he bought the coffees from the same cafe he always did. He was cooperative, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of something that didn't sit right with the lead detective. The real breakthrough came from the security footage. The police and the office manager watched it together on a large monitor. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed Mark arriving in the morning, carrying the tray, but he didn't go straight to the desks. First, he ducked into a small, rarely used storage closet just off the main kitchen area. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but it caught him turning his back for a moment. He fiddled with one of the coffee cups. He took a small vial out of his pocket, uncapped it, and quickly tipped its contents into one of the black coffees, the one destined for Alex's desk. He then pocketed the vial, composed himself, and walked out into the office with that same bright, friendly smile he wore every day. The room was silent as they watched the footage. It was chilling. The friendly, harmless Mark, the guy who brought everyone coffee, was a cold, calculating poisoner. The motive, as it turned out, was exactly what you might suspect. Bitter, professional jealousy. During the police interrogation, faced with the undeniable video evidence, Mark's facade finally crumbled. He confessed everything. He had grown to resent Alex's success. He felt overlooked and underappreciated, while Alex received all the accolades and promotions. He saw Alex as an obstacle to his own career advancement. The constant praise Alex received felt like a personal insult to Mark. So he hatched a plan. A sick, twisted plan. He knew Alex never drank the coffee. The daily offer was his way of establishing a pattern. He would put the poison in Alex's cup every single day. If Alex drank it, he'd die, and no one would suspect the coffee guy. If he didn't, Mark would simply dump it at the end of the day and try again tomorrow. It was a horrifying game of Russian roulette. He was just waiting for the one day Alex would slip up, the one day he'd be distracted enough to take a sip. And that Tuesday, he did. The revelation sent shockwaves through the company. To think that someone they saw every day, someone they shared pleasantries and laughter with, was capable of such a dark act was terrifying. Mark was arrested and faced a long prison sentence for attempted murder. Alex eventually made a full recovery, but he never returned to that office. The coffee cup incident, as it came to be known, served as a grim reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers are hidden behind the most unassuming smiles. It really makes you think, doesn't it? You never truly know the people you work with. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please hit the like button and subscribe for more true crime stories. Stay safe out there.